And today joining me is Dr. Bettina Lowinski and founder of Global Women Career Lab, MCC Coach. Welcome, Bettina.
Oh, thank you, Christine. I'm so happy to be with you. It's my honor. And because I admire sHero and everything you do for women in China and Asia, so it's my pleasure to be with you.
In the Global Women Career Lab research, you have interviewed women around the world on their careers. How do you see the impact of the virus crisis internationally on women?
Yeah, so I think the first impact, of course, that I observe, not in my research, but what we can see in the media is that women in healthcare services are the most effective because they got infected much more at a higher rate compared to their male colleagues. So I think this is the real direct impact of the crisis on these strong women who work in the hospitals. But then secondly, we see a lot of burden for women in their work life because they have now triple burden. One is the children at home with education and homework. Secondly, housework. And then third is the home office. And I did some survey in China and in Europe asking, so how is it going? And 80% said, yes, it's the women doing all this work. So the impact, I think, is their energy goes away from the job. And we see in the media, even experts less visible. So yeah, I think there are some impacts here, and it will be interesting on the long run to see figures for that.
And what is the impact on women in management functions?
I think it's too early to say. I can just summarize what I'm hearing from many interviews and conversation is that because also on all levels, of women, they have to do many other work in many other roles, this triple burden again. And so the energy, it's normal, goes away from the job, and they have to care for other things. So they cannot join a meeting, or it's difficult at home because the kids are there and so on. So in Germany already there's big discussion about the situation going back to old times when less women were in senior management.
What is the impact on women in management functions?
I think it's too early to say. I can just summarize what I'm hearing from many interviews and conversation is that because also on all levels, of women, they have to do many other work in many other roles, this triple burden again. And so the energy, it's normal, goes away from the job, and they have to care for other things. So they cannot join a meeting, or it's difficult at home because the kids are there and so on. So in Germany already there's big discussion about the situation going back to old times when less women were in senior management.
For women in management, and I mean, it is more difficult in some places.
Right, you know, Christine, in my new research and new book, I looked into 5 countries. So 5 huge economic countries like China, Russia, and then Japan, Germany, and France. And I analyzed the women careers, but also the environments. So what we know is, of course, that the countries are different. So there is a huge research from Grant Thornton, and they look into the proportion of women in senior management in all these countries. So for example, the world average is 24%. So now we have countries above and countries far below. So we can guess now who are the countries above and below. Let me say Russia is the highest of the countries I researched, followed by China. And then surprisingly, Germany is quite low. Even though we have a female chancellor, the situation is not advanced. It's only 16%. And Japan only 9%. And US is 20%. Compared to China, 38%. So these figures give an indicator about the environment on the cultural aspect, society aspect, and also market aspect for women.
What barriers did the women describe? I mean, how did they handle them? For example, what is the role of a husband and partners, and how do women manage work and life? Do most of them have children, and how do they manage?
I think that's the juicy question here is now coming. So typical barriers, I can say from my research, they are the same for women, but they also differ from country to country. So let me give you one example. Motherhood is a challenge for women everywhere in each country when it comes to career. Now, the difference in the countries is what is the exactly effect on the career. So for example, in China, women said, well, it's not such an important effect. It's slowing a little bit. I have a phase of slowing down my career, but then I continue. Whereas in other countries, it has huge effects. We have things like, of course, glass ceiling, yeah. China, again, less. Women said, wow, my environment in the big cities already is quite equal. But then you have countries like Japan or Germany and even France, where the women said, well, we clearly have a glass ceiling for women who want to go to CEO functions, but even to the second level, like executive team members. So there is discrimination in a lot of places, like discrimination coming from male colleagues or male bosses, but there's also discrimination of women amongst women in some countries. And well, what did you ask? You asked for the spouses, no? What's the role of the husband? So actually, yes. Yeah, that's a nice question, because in some countries, the spouse is a really helpful. So, very proud of their women. But in other countries, the spouse is a barrier, because if they don't support, if women have to fight at home, yeah, for their time investment and so on, then that becomes a real challenge. So spouse can be a barrier. And for example, in Russia, some women said, wow, that's a problem, yeah, with my husband. In France also, China not so much, and Germany not so much. So it's different in each country.